Okay, so are you ready to dive into some global power plays? Because today we are going to be talking about a story coming out of the Philippines that feels kind of like an episode of House of Cards.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that's got it all. Family ties, a legacy of power, and maybe even a hint of dynasty building.
We are unpacking a brand new article from Rappler,
Which, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, is a digital media company in the Philippines.
a leading news source over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this article was just published today, so
Oh, wow.
we're talking breaking news, hot off the presses.
Okay.
So the story goes like this. President Marcos Jr. just appointed a new Secretary of the Interior and Local Government.
Okay.
That's the DILG for short, in case you don't feel like saying the whole thing every time.
Yeah, no, it's a mouthful.
But basically, this is a big deal.
Huge.
This is not some, minor position.
Right.
We're talking about the department that oversees the police, local governments, like everything.
Absolutely. It's a lot of power concentrated in one position.
Yeah, it's a lot of power, right?
Yeah.
So who is this new appointee? His name is Jonvic Remulla.
All right.
He was previously the governor of Cavite.
Right.
Now, that name might not mean a whole lot
To those of us who...
to those of us who are not super familiar with Filipino politics.
Yeah,
But here's where it gets interesting. Jonvic Remulla has a brother,
he does.
and his brothers are
Another familiar face.
a
Right.
very familiar face in the Marcos Jr. administration.
That's right. His brother, Boying Remulla, he is currently the Justice Secretary. So, you've got two brothers, side by side, holding two of the most powerful positions in the country.
It's giving
Dynasty vibes.
a little bit, right?
And just to add another layer, because why not?
Sure,
They have another brother, Gilbert,
they do.
who was also appointed by Marcos Jr. to a pretty sweet gig on the board of the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation.
So we've got three brothers in very, very influential positions, all appointed by the president. Yeah, so you can see why some people might be like, hold on a second. Is this cronyism?
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth unpacking that word, cronyism, because it gets thrown around a lot. But essentially, we're talking about the practice of favoring friends and family in political appointments, often at the expense of merit or qualifications.
Okay, so like the good old, it's not what you know, it's who you know
Yeah,
kind of thing,
exactly.
which, let's be real, can be a pretty slippery slope.
It can be, and especially in a context like the Philippines, where you have a history, a very complicated history with political dynasties.
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about Philippine politics without talking about the Marcos family, right?
Yeah.
I mean, love them or hate them, they've been a major source for decades.
Absolutely. I mean, their influence on the country is undeniable, and that's part of what makes this so interesting, right? Because you've got this new administration led by the son of former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., appointing not one, but two brothers from a single family.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It raises eyebrows, for sure.
It does. But, to play devil's advocate for a second, I mean, is it possible that the Remulla brothers are just like really good at their jobs?
Well, and this is where it gets interesting, because it's not as simple as saying, oh, they're just a powerful family and leaving it at that. We have to actually look at the specifics. The Remulla family, for example, they have a long history in Cavite politics.
Yeah, their dad, Juanito Remulla Jr., he served under former President Corazon Aquino, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. So we're talking about a family that's been deeply entrenched in the political system for generations.
Yet giving, political pedigree.
Right. And that kind of experience, that deep understanding of how things work, it can be incredibly valuable.
Okay, so experience, check.
Right.
But what about Amusement specifically? Like, what kind of leader was he as governor?
Yeah, let's delve into that a little bit.
Does his track record in Cavite give us any hints about how he might approach this new role on the national stage?
Right, because this is a huge step up for him.
Huge step up.
Yeah. From governing a province to now overseeing local governance for the entire country.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a question worth exploring.
Okay, so let's explore it.
Let's do it. Well, when Jonvic Remulla was the governor of Cavite, he was really focused on infrastructure.
Okay, like what? Roads?
Yeah.
Bridges?
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of emphasis on improving transportation.
Gotcha.
And he was really into digitalizing government services.
Interesting. So kind of like a tech-forward approach.
Yeah, like trying to make things more efficient, for people.
Okay, so that's all well and good, but did he actually tackle some of the bigger, more systemic issues facing Cavite?
Right, because you can have fancy roads and online portals, but if people are struggling with poverty or crime.
Exactly.
It's not really solving the root problems.
So how did he handle those kinds of issues?
Well, Cavite, like a lot of provinces in the Philippines, has really deep-rooted issues with poverty and inequality. And while, yeah, Remulla, he did some social welfare programs, there are definitely critics out there who say that he didn't go far enough.
Like it was more of a Band-Aid solution than actually addressing like the underlying causes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then on the law enforcement side, which is interesting considering the DILG oversees the police.
Right, that's a big one.
He took a really tough stance on crime when he was governor.
Okay, so like what? More police on the streets, tougher sentencing.
Yeah, like stricter policing for sure. And he actually reinstated the death penalty for certain drug offenses.
Wow, okay. So a bit of a hardliner approach.
Yeah, you could say that.
And how did that go over? I imagine there were strong opinions on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a controversial issue, right?
Sure.
Some people felt like it was necessary, like a strong response to a real problem. But then, of course, you have human rights groups who were very vocal in their opposition.
Right. It's that classic debate, isn't it? Security versus individual rights.
Exactly.
It's never black and white.
Never. And it's something to keep in mind as Jonvic Remulla steps into this new role, because now he's not just governing Cavite, he's overseeing local governance for the entire country.
It's a whole other ballgame.
Exactly. The stakes are much higher.
So are we essentially looking at a replay of the same debates, just on a larger scale now?
I think that's a very real possibility.
Okay, so what do you think?
I mean, it's still early days, right? But this appointment, it's definitely raising a lot of questions. Some people are optimistic, you know.
Really?
They see this as a smart move by Marcos Jr. bringing in someone with experience.
Right, someone who knows how to get things done.
Exactly. But then on the other side, you have people who are really concerned. They see this as, I don't know, a power grab.
Like consolidating power within certain families.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which, let's be honest, is a valid concern in the Philippines.
It is a valid concern. I mean, they've got a history with that, right?
Yeah. It makes you think about the balance of power, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's like, how much power is too much power? And what safeguards need to be in place?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And it's not just about the Philippines either, right? This idea of political dynasties.
Right.
It's a global phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. You see it everywhere.
It's a tale as old as time.
Right.
But I do think it takes on a particular urgency, especially now. In a context where you have concerns about disinformation.
Oh, yeah.
About the erosion of democratic norms. It just adds another layer to everything.
It's like, how do you even begin to disentangle all of that? So where do we go from here? Like, what are the big questions we should be asking as this whole thing plays out?
Well, I think we really need to keep a close eye on Jonvic Remulla's priorities now that he's head of the DILG.
Right. Like, what's he going to focus on first?
Exactly. Will it be infrastructure? Digitalization?
Or is he going to shift gears and tackle something completely different?
Right. Like police reform, for example.
Or maybe those deeper social and economic issues we were talking about.
Exactly. Those are all huge issues in the Philippines, and they all fall under the DLG's purview. So no shortage of challenges for him to tackle.
Not at all.
But also, I'm curious to see how he'll handle the political side of things.
Right, because it's one thing to be governor of a province.
It's a whole other thing to navigate the power dynamics of the Marcos Jr. administration.
Exactly. Will he be his own man?
Or will he just become another voice in the chorus, so to speak?
Right. Will he stand up for what he believes in, even if it means disagreeing with the president?
Or will he just go along with whatever the family decides?
It's going to be interesting to watch it all unfold, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that politics, it's not just some abstract thing.
It's not a game.
No, it has real consequences for people's lives.
Absolutely. And I think it's our responsibility to stay informed.
To pay attention.
And to hold our leaders accountable.
Well said.
Because ultimately, the future of the Philippines, it depends on an engaged and informed citizenry.
Couldn't agree more. So, to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this. Keep your eyes on the Philippines, because this story is far from over. It's a story about power, about family, and about the never-ending quest for a more just and equitable society. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, we'll see some twists and turns along the way that nobody saw coming. Thanks for joining us.